On the 9th of January 2025, a battered and bloodied Russian army soldier was hauled off the battlefield by Ukrainian forces in Kursk Oblast. A swift shakedown led them to a military ID, which revealed that the soldier was 19 years old and a native of the Siberian Republic of Tuva, close to Mongolia. But it was fake. The soldier couldn't speak Russian, something which would be standard for the ethnic Tuvan majority of the Republic, or even someone who'd spent more than a few months in the Russian military. The soldier was North Korean, belonging to a detachment of DPRK soldiers supporting Russia in Kursk in a faltering attempt to counter the Ukraine incursion. With the assistance of a South Korean intelligence service, further information on North Korean involvement was quickly uncovered. As it stands, Ukraine occupies around 800 square kilometers of Russian territory in the region of Kursk, predominantly in the border district of Sudzha. Ukrainian forces sprang across the frontier in a surprise offensive in August 2024, the first assault directly on Russian soil since World War II. They quickly overwhelmed Russian defenses and captured as much as 1,400 square kilometers of land. While Russia countered and reclaimed about half the ground lost, this was not before suffering severe casualties and being forced to evacuate some 150,000 people from the affected region. Russia has, to date, been unsuccessful in repelling the Ukrainian ground assault from its territory entirely, at significant cost to its and Putin's image. Still, as the Russian counter advanced, a new Ukrainian offensive was unleashed in January, focused on dealing a follow-up blow to the Kursk defenders. But on this occasion, the Ukrainians would be met not only by the Russian army, but by a new player in the conflict entirely. In the period between the first and second offensives, a detachment of between 10 and 12,000 North Korean soldiers were sent to support Russia in Kursk. The first reports of their involvement emerged in October, when a South Korean spy agency announced the deployment of around 1,500 Korean People's Army troops to Russia. The deployment of the North Koreans is a byproduct of the close ties between Moscow and Pyongyang. Russia is one of only 22 countries with a diplomatic mission in North Korea, and one of only 2 countries, alongside China, with flights to the secretive state. The counties are separated by the Korea-Russia Friendship Bridge, and Vladimir Putin is one of the very few world leaders to have made a state visit to the DPRK, something he has done on 2 occasions. Amidst the close relationship, Russia and North Korea have signed several military treaties, including an agreement on arms cooperation in 2001, another on limited security cooperation in 2015, and ultimately a mutual defense pact in July 2024. Now, all this has led to North Korea playing a more than passive role in the war in Ukraine. The DPRK became only the 3rd entity to recognize the breakaway Luhansk and Donetsk republics in 2022, after Russia and Syria, collectively the only 3 countries to do so. By autumn, its shells were arriving in Russia to shore up depleted Russian munitions, and KPA ballistic missiles were identified on the battlefield not long after. According to NK News, North Korean military personnel probably first deployed to Russia in 2023. Already by that time, Pyongyang had been providing hardware support in the form of 170mm self-propelled artillery systems and 240mm multiple-launch rocket systems, or MLRS. As such, the first North Korean boots on the ground were technical advisors and hardware maintenance staff. This changed with the arrival of troops in late 2024 in the wake of the Mutual Defense Pact signed that same summer. Now, most of the North Korean detachment, some 7,000 to 9,000 men, are ground forces, according to Ukrainian and South Korean sources. This includes light infantry, special ops, guard units, and construction personnel. In addition, it's believed that a full artillery brigade, around 1,500 men, are part of the North Korean force, and NK News estimated that up to 6 KPA generals have been sent to Russia as well, although this figure has not been corroborated. Now, much of the ground force is believed to belong to the 11th Army Corps, one of Pyongyang's most elite, and a detachment which has also been referred to as the Storm Corps. The 11th Corps are said to be able to withstand a high degree of physical pain and torture, as noted by Michael Madden, an expert from the Stimson Center in Washington. According to Madden, quoting here, "What they lack in combat, they make up for with what they can tolerate physically and mentally." Now, many of the North Korean light infantry quickly wound up straight on the front line, with only a week of training in Russia before deployment, according to the Ukrainian SBU intelligence service. Now, in spite of their suppressed prowess, some reports would indicate the North Koreans are not as effective in countering the Ukrainians as their reputation would suggest. The Storm Corps may be drilled in physical pain and torture containment, but are without battlefield experience, which would allow them to match the abilities of the battle-hardened Ukrainians. According to South Korea, the troops suffer from an acute lack of understanding of contemporary warfare, something likely exacerbated by their lack of preparation as well as military tactics. Reports indicate they may have fallen victim to the meat grinder tactics of the Russian forces, although figures on the numbers of casualties sustained remain varied. Russia has neither confirmed nor denied the presence of North Korean troops and has consistently released little information on its army casualty count in Kursk and the wider war. North Korea, for its part, has never released much of anything related to its military affairs. But Ukraine has described the KPA soldiers as having suffered woeful losses. By the end of December, roughly 2 months after deployment, President Zelensky announced that the detachment had suffered as many as 3,000 killed or wounded in Kursk. By January, Ukrainian sources had raised that figure further to 4,000. US estimates were lower, but nonetheless significant, 1,200 also in mid-January. South Korea simultaneously offered its own body count, describing the DPRK losses as 300 killed and 2,700 wounded, for a collective casualty count of 3,000, closer resembling the Ukrainian estimate than the American. With that said, military analysts such as John Helen have stated that the recovery of territory by Russia has proceeded more effectively since the appearance of the North Korean troops. Helen argued that the North Koreans have proved disciplined in combat and in large part responsible for the 30% territorial loss suffered by Ukraine since October 2024. Such sentiments have been echoed by units of the Ukrainian field staff, reporting that, far from cannon fodder, they have proved fit, motivated, and adept with small arms. According to Ukrainian serviceman Yuri Bonda, the soldiers have proved themselves able to shoot down drones using small arms and have developed innovative tactics to counter UAVs, with one soldier breaking cover to attract drone attention and allowing others to target the drone with fire. The same tactic, on the other hand, has been dismissed by some analysts as lunacy. The North Korean soldiers have also been imbued with kamikaze-style tactics, reportedly blowing themselves up in the face of Ukrainian troop encroachment. This was confirmed by some North Korean defectors who stated that to be captured by the enemy would be considered shameful, and DPRK soldiers have been instructed to take their own lives in such a circumstance. The practice has since gained notoriety, with Reuters labeling the detachment suicide soldiers. Still, even if reports that the North Korean involvement has yielded nothing other than miserable failure prove accurate, it is possible that this will represent barely a hindrance for the DPRK leader. In a perverse way, the decision to send his troops to Kursk for Kim Jong-Un is really a win-win. On the one hand, the July 2024 Mutual Defense Pact with Russia could be seen as a huge strategic asset. Aside from currying favor with Putin, the pact secures, in theory, Russian military support for Pyongyang in the event of an outbreak of hostilities on the Korean peninsula. As pointed out by Mongolian security analyst Zorig Dashtori, North Korea's support of Russia may not be critically significant for Moscow, but the reverse could be decisive for North Korea in regards to its own security and defense. Although Russia has abandoned erstwhile allies in the past, such as Armenia, it may see itself bound to North Korea, given the latter's provision of soldiers and hardware, and given the relatively few uncontestable allies Moscow has been left with following Bashar al-Assad's demise and the pro-Western ambitions of most of its eastern neighbors. Pyongyang will have secured itself formidable support without even significant cost to the relationship with its other strategic partner, China, which reaffirmed its friendly ties with North Korea in October. And on the other hand, by sending soldiers to Ukraine, there is a chance that what Kim might get in return is fighting men with actual war experience and the chance to stress test his forces and munitions prowess in real-life combat. Kim's allied army is highly short on war experience. Since the end of large-scale hostilities with the South in 1953, they've largely wallowed in endless training, obsessively preparing for a war which hasn't yet happened. For obvious reasons, North Korea is not part of any international peacekeeping operations and hasn't openly engaged in any active warfare until Kursk. For the better part of a century, their combat experience has been limited to the occasional skirmish along the border with the South. In the meantime, its military tech has languished, by now superseded by the advanced hardware of South Korea. Although Pyongyang is believed to have sent Russia as many as 5 million shells since September 2023, including Hwasong short-range ballistic missiles, Carnegie has reported that the failure rate of these missiles in Ukraine has been notably high. The DPRK is heavily restricted by its military budget, which, while somewhere between 20 and 30% of its entire GDP, is thought to be less than a quarter of that of the South's budget of some $48 billion. The tentative availability of Russian military equipment, not least its 5,000-plus nuclear warheads, could be a deterrent that could shore up the DPRK's security extensively. In short, the benefit to Kim Jong-Un includes both military assurances from Putin against the South and the opportunity to gain combat experience and test the mettle of his troops. And if his men get butchered, well, to put it starkly, it's less mouths to feed, isn't it? North Korea has one of the world's largest militaries with 1.28 million active soldiers, but it is also in an almost perpetual state of famine, both due to the ineffective agricultural practices of the state and because of crippling international sanctions. Around 5% of its entire population is in the military, where conscription lasts no less than 10 years for males. This is aside from the roughly 600,000 who are believed to serve as reserve soldiers. For any static army, that would constitute an astronomical drain on resources that the DPRK simply does not have. In an interview with the BBC, a North Korean defector named Hanwell revealed that far from being combat-ready warriors in peak condition, the soldiers of the Korean People's Army are severely malnourished. This includes those in the storied Storm Corps, in which Hanwell has served. He revealed that rather than being a crack battalion of mega soldiers, the Storm Corps are equally as combat experienced as the rest of the army and equally as malnourished. He claims to have lost 10 kilos during his first month of service due to piecemeal rations. So, in the event that the North Koreans are indeed being obliterated in Kursk, this will come as little worry to Putin as well as his partner in Pyongyang. While accurate insights as to the number of losses in Kursk are difficult to ascertain, it has generally been accepted that the war has come at a heavy loss to Russia in terms of human capital. The BBC reported that Moscow has recently been recruiting at least 20,000 new soldiers a month to support its war effort, citing NATO estimates that more than 1,000 Russian soldiers are killed or wounded on average daily. So, in the event that DPRK soldiers are being used as cannon fodder by Russia, this will come as a little other than respite to the beleaguered Russian forces, having incurred such heavy losses of their own in the preceding period. It would not be the first time that effective mercenaries have been lost to Moscow's meat grinder tactics in the conflict. Since the earliest stages of the war, it was alleged that the local militias of Luhansk and Donetsk suffered a similar fate, being subject to a casualty count of up to 50% in the Donbass theater. The same is true of minority detachments in the Russian army proper, including the ethnic Tuvans and Buryats, who were reported to have suffered catastrophic losses in Ukraine and are the two single highest republics of the Russian Federation by number of natives lost to the fighting. Many will also recall that wanton and unnecessary losses were reported by Yevgeny Prigozhin in 2023, who declared that his Wagner troops were forced to carry out the dirty work of the Russian army and suffer terrible casualties in the process for minimal gain. The same outlook is likely true of North Korea. Given its massive number of personnel, Kim Jong-Un is likely to be unconcerned by the floundering of his men in Kursk. Reuters reported that some 1.4 million North Koreans applied to join the military in the autumn of 2024 amid rising tensions with the South. So, if the deployed DPRK soldiers do not return, that means less mouths to feed, with the meager military rations back home by an army staff that has probably already regenerated itself. It is also highly likely that the soldiers, members of the elite 11th Corps notwithstanding, are junior officers, low on military experience and largely dispensable. This would seem to be corroborated by the two captive Koreans detained by Ukraine, found to be roughly 25 and 19 years old, as well as online videos reportedly of the troops in Russia, which show younger, frailer soldiers than the standard class, according to defector Hanwell. In short, even if the entire force would be wiped out, it is likely that Kim Jong-un would hardly even bat an eye, other than noting down a few things on training. Thank you for watching.